27 people were injured and more than 20 were arrested. In sport, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been sacked as Manchester United manager. That's after the team suffered a 4-1 loss to Watford, its fifth league defeat in 7 matches. Coach Michael Carrick is to take charge while the club looks for an interim manager for the rest of the season. There's been a mixed reaction from fans.
It's a very sad day. I think the manager of the club, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, has been hung out to dry.
Yeah, I do feel like it's the right decision, but I just hope we don't go down a spiral now of finding really bad managers and going for the exact same thing over and over again.
It's not been great, has it? And we're just like pretty much a mid-league team. So yeah, I don't think he's done very well, to be honest. I think the Glazers need to go as well.
124 people have been arrested following protests supporting the 9 jailed Insulate Britain activists in London. Demonstrators occupied Lambeth Bridge and Vauxhall Cross, forcing police to redirect traffic. The majority of those detained have now been released and are under investigation. The Foreign Office says China must provide verifiable evidence that the tennis player Peng Shuai is safe and well. The latest video posted by Chinese state media appears to show her at a tennis tournament in Beijing. Fellow players, the United Nations and the White House have also voiced concerns for the welfare of the Wimbledon doubles champion. She disappeared after she made sexual assault allegations against a former Chinese government official 3 weeks ago. Conservative MP Tim Loughton told GBNews that China needs to be brought to account.
They just do not tolerate any criticism, and that's why many of us have called for, and again Parliament voted for, a diplomatic boycott of the forthcoming Beijing Olympics, which incredibly the International Olympic Committee awarded to Beijing, despite all the publicity about the human rights abuses, despite what's going on with genocide and everything else. It's just inconceivable that we should be sending VIPs to this propaganda exercise in Beijing next February.
The remains of South Africa's last apartheid president, F.W. de Klerk, has been cremated at a private service in Cape Town. A small group of guests was seen arriving at his home before driving to a memorial park alongside his wife, where the funeral service took place. De Klerk shared the Nobel Peace Prize with Nelson Mandela in 1993 and was praised for his role in scrapping apartheid. He died on the 11th of this month after a long battle with cancer. More migrants, including young children, have been crossing the English Channel in the last 24 hours. Official figures haven't yet been confirmed, but it's believed hundreds have made the journey. More than 24,700 people have arrived in the UK so far this year. That's almost 3 times more than last year. From tomorrow in the UK, over 40s, well, in England at least, will be able to book their COVID booster jab. NHS England says around 500,000 people in the age bracket are now eligible for a 3rd dose. The government's encouraging people to take the jab to prevent another wave of cases. And for a UK first, a zebra crossing has been introduced in Portsmouth that lights up as people approach. Take a look at this. Its sensor-triggered LED panels in the road make it more visible to drivers and safer for pedestrians as well. If the lighting system proves successful, the concept could be replicated across other parts of the city. That's your news update. I'm back in half an hour with the latest news headlines now. Let's return to Nana Akua.
Right, so it turns out that everything is racist, even down to the hospital equipment. Look, I think it's time we stopped calling everything that. Julie Birchall wrote a fantastic article where she pointed out that many things that have ultimately been cancelled because of this. Structural and institutionalised racism, terms that seem to be interchangeable, nobody appears to know the difference, are used for everything, enabling individuals who are responsible to absolve themselves of all knowledge of any racial bias and blame it on the structure or an institution instead of admitting that they, as an individual or a collective of individuals, are actually to blame. Look, as an ethnic minority, so someone from a group which consists of people who are, based on their ethnicity, in the minority, I believe it's time we all changed the language. Take the case that Sajid Javid has highlighted regarding the oxygen level monitors, which are very likely to have been part of the reason why many people of colour didn't get the treatment they needed soon enough, and as a result, many died disproportionately of COVID, even though it transpires that black Africans are the least likely to possess the COVID gene. People are calling this structural racism, therefore absolving the responsibility of the people behind purchasing these things, when in truth, they've known for 40 years that the equipment in many cases became more inaccurate the darker the skin. That's not structural racism. That's called trying to save money and knowingly allowing people to use substandard equipment without educating those that are using it of the drawbacks. The term structural detaches them from the act and makes individuals seem less responsible. Even textbooks that only show skin conditions on white skin are being called racist, when in truth they were created for a majority white population and haven't been changed for years. It took a 20-year-old student called Mukwende to take matters into his own hands, and with the help of professors, only last year, he created a free downloadable manual called Mind the Gap, a handbook of clinical signs in black and brown skin. This problem, he said, was so deeply ingrained that one of the hardest parts of this project was just finding images of conditions on non-white skin. The thing I don't get is that countless doctors and nurses educated using these textbooks would have been from a diverse range of backgrounds and could have spoken out louder and sooner. And from my own experience, I believe I am still alive because when I was gravely ill, the surgeons and the team who looked after me were all black. So they had a better understanding of how things would present themselves in my body. To me, this is actually more about doing away with the one-size-fits-all approach to medicine and treatment that we've all been so accustomed to. It's about taking personal responsibility for making changes. Calling it a form of institutionalised or systemic racism absolves us all from the responsibility of acknowledging that we have been complicit in the process. Whilst COVID is horrendous, I am glad that we have acknowledged many lessons. We are all individuals. Whilst genetically we may share commonalities, we are all unique, and medicine and the equipment that supports it needs to keep up. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. Double child murderer Colin Pitchfork is sent back to prison 2 months after his release. I'm asking, is the probation service fit for purpose? An inheritance tax on the North, that's what Red Wall Tories have dubbed new social care changes. Should they be scrapped? And the United States divided. Should President Joe Biden apologise for calling cleared Kyle Rittenhouse a white supremacist? That's coming up in the next hour. You can also tell me what you think on everything we're discussing by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk, or why not send me a tweet at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Welcome to my panel, Albie Amankona. He's a commentator and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, and the broadcaster Danny Kelly. Welcome to the show. Albie, you're a newbie.
I am a newbie. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I saw you on the other show and I thought I have to have you on my show. He's brilliant. Fantastic. And Dally, he's always here on a Sunday. Can't get rid of him.
I feel so welcome.
Doesn't he just? He's been arguing with me over the aircon. He comes in.
Well, there's no air in this place, Albie. It's Alb. Come on, let's get off on the right foot together.
Absolutely.
It's stifling.
Alb or Al?
Alb or Al. OK, well, we got off on the wrong foot.
Well, there's more reviews than me. You've got more insulation, so it's all very...
Oh, it started already. And believe it or not, there's a story about all-you-can-eat buffets later on in the show as well. Yeah, and I chose it.
I thought so. What a surprise there. So, Albie, welcome. So what do you think? I mean, this is a great thing that Sajid Javid has highlighted, but what are your thoughts on...
I think this is ultimately a great news story that has come from a really bad news story. You know, at the beginning of the pandemic, we were all very concerned about what was going on in ethnic minority communities in Britain and in the US and in other places where there are large diasporas. And now we seem to be getting some answers as to why we were seeing these huge spikes in ethnic minority communities and not the sort of native European communities that exist here in Europe. And I'm really proud of the Health Secretary to come out so strongly and talk about how he wants to eradicate these kinds of disparities. And it's really good, actually, that the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities has been established, which, of course, was one of the recommendations in the Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities report, which came out earlier on this year. So I look forward to seeing what this report and the work brings from it.
Well, it's interesting, though, because we have known that, but the fact that these oxygen-type monitors work quite ineffectively on darker skin. So they did a study and found that I think it was in 12%, the death rate or the inaccuracies was 12% higher than in lighter skin. And we've known this for years. So the fact that we carry on using this equipment or not educating those using it of the danger of it and is not really good enough.
It's absolutely not good enough, but I'm just thankful that now people are listening. It is always shocking to me that these basic things seem to be missed out when it comes to testing equipment. We had it with seatbelts, of course, when cars were being developed. They only tested them on men, so that women were dying more in car crashes than men were. And people would wonder why this was happening, but it was just this very basic common sense stuff wasn't being done, and it's been happening with health equipment and medicines for 40 years, and we need to be much more smart about these things.
Yeah, it's not, and as I said, I don't think it's a structural racism, Danny.
I think it's scandalous, and I think it's a worldwide scandal, because these machines are sold all around the world and are used by doctors on all continents. And if we've known... I'm 50 years old, and for 40 years, I know I... Be careful. I know I look slightly younger, but I think it's a scandal that for 80% of my life on planet Earth, black people and brown people have been given tests on machinery that isn't 100% accurate. And I've done a bit of research into this story, and people have known about it. You two have more of a personal investment in this story, but when I was at the BBC in Birmingham, there was a Jamaican lad, a security guy called Basil, lovely guy. His mum and dad both died of COVID-19. And when I read this story, I immediately thought of Baz, and I wonder whether his beloved mother and father could still be alive, because they could have been one of the 12% where doctors, medical experts who should know that one size doesn't fit all with medicine, should have maybe done supplementary tests to find out how much oxygen's in their bodies.
But
it's scandalous.
But the thing is, though, they may well have been treated by black people in any case. So that's the thing. So I sort of look at it and think, it really, they probably wouldn't have known. And the fact that they wouldn't have known, it's not a good look, is it?
May I just go back to your monologue?
Yes.
Why do you believe that, because you were treated by black people, your health is better today?
Well, because I think that they knew what to look out for on my skin type. They know, so statistically, we tend to have, black females in particular, have a higher blood pressure than our white counterparts. So it was eclampsia that I suffered with, so eclampsia with HELLP syndrome, when your liver, kidneys, everything starts failing. You've got a child, you've got to get the child out, because your blood pressure will continue to rise and rise and rise. And I think they were more aware of the threshold, first of all, for darker women. So maybe our threshold might be slightly higher because we start from a higher place, but also the way I was treated and also the way the surgery was done, because it was a caesarean in the end. And I believe that the way they, put me back together, in a sense, meant that there was literally no scarring. I just felt that they understood me more, because I think they would have known how to treat my sort of ethnicity better. I believe that. And if you look at in Africa, where they said, we've got to give the vaccine to those in Africa, it's going to be terrible. Well, they had COVID in Africa, and not many people were dying, really. And that was firstly because we now know that we're genetically less likely to have the mutation in the gene that would make you more susceptible. But also, I did believe, even at the time, that it was the way that people were being treated, because... that was my personal thought at the time.
I think as well, with the COVID deaths being much lower in Africa, is that as a continent, I think it's the youngest continent in the world. I think the average age is in the 20s, and obviously the death rate in that age cohort is very low.
But absolutely, there's obviously lots of factors, but one of them was that, I believe it was that.
But an interesting reason as to why so many ethnic minorities suffered in the UK is because, generally speaking, demographically, if you're black, generally speaking, you're likely to live in a smaller house with more people. You're more likely, and I know they sound sweeping generalisations, but there's a lot of veracity with it. You're more likely to work on the front line. you're more likely to be a bus driver in London.
So these are the factors that will make you more susceptible for catching it.
Correct.
But when you've caught it, then at that point, it depends if the numbers catching it were disproportionately higher.
Correct.
Than those of the white counterparts. And I don't know whether that is the case, actually. But one thing is for sure is that I did believe at the time that there was some disparity in the way that people were being treated, but not in a deliberate way, but just in a badly educated way, I suspect. And those who were treating them, some of them would have been treating black people in any case. But in my case, I genuinely believe that I'm still here today because of the treatment I got.
I think it just shows us, this whole episode of what's happened, that a lot of things can be solved by raising awareness and education. And we don't necessarily have to have these heated arguments about things. When we see things which are just wrong, and it's relatively easy, the solutions in terms of just teaching people in a different way, that's what we should be pushing forwards. And so I hope that's what comes from this.
Just one final observation. Do you believe, then, that these oximeters or whatever, do you believe that there are hospitals in Africa that have been misreading patients' oxygen levels since whenever?
Yes,
there must be.
That's one of the parts of the story, is that these pieces of equipment were developed in the West by mostly Western people, and therefore using Western cohorts when they were testing them. And this equipment is used around the world. So it's not just had an impact on ethnic minorities in Britain, it's had an impact on people in Asia, people in Africa, people in South America. And one of the most amazing parts of this story, actually, which we haven't mentioned yet, is that Sajid Javid is working with his US counterpart, who is the first Latin health secretary in the US as well. So this is a great transatlantic partnership as well, to really push forward this mission to help people both in America, in Europe and also around the world.
And what do you think of the language, so calling it institutionalised racism, when there are elements of it that we knew already?
Yes.
That this wasn't really... I mean, we knew. 40 years ago, they knew. So that's not really institutionalised racism as far as I see it. But would you beg to differ?
I think people get quite nervous about using the word institutional racism. It gets quite controversial, so I would maybe stay away from it from that reason. Look, it's just incompetence, really, over 40 years. As soon as this was found out, it really should have been rectified. Maybe the institutional racism part comes from the fact that people have actually been calling this out for a very long time, and it's only now that people are acting. So that might be where people argue there might be an institutional racism aspect to it. But look, we can call it incompetence and all agree on that. This should never have happened.
Absolutely. See, we're agreed. What is this? It's supposed to be some sort of argument. Get him out of here. No, I'm joking. Listen, stay with us because still to come, it's time for our great British debate. Yes, that's the one. As double child killer Colin Pitchfork is sent back to jail over a breach of licence conditions, why was he released in the first place? Send us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and tell us what you think. You can also tweet @GBNews, and there's a poll up right now asking you this. Is the probation service fit for purpose? Cast your vote now. First, it's the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry and cold for many. Let's take a look at the details. Skies will clear in the southwest and temperatures will fall. It will be cold tonight, and in the countryside temperatures could dip below freezing. Some showers will continue in the southeast, and it will be windy around the coast. There will be clear spells between the showers. Wales will have a dry and clear evening with the frost forming tonight. Temperatures could fall as low as -2 degrees Celsius in parts of the countryside. Clear skies also extend into the Midlands with a chilly evening to come and temperatures expected to fall quickly. A strong wind will continue to blow along the northeast coast, which brings showers to northeast England. These will be blustery at times with some possible hail. Southern Scotland should stay mostly dry with clear skies, and it will turn rather chilly tonight with temperatures as low as -5 degrees Celsius in some spots. A dry and clear night in Northern Ireland too. It will be breezy around the coast, but turning cold inland.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
So it's time for our big debate this hour. Is the probation service fit for purpose? The Ministry of Justice have revealed that double child killer Colin Pitchfork has been arrested and recalled to prison over a breach of licence conditions. The BBC reported that staff at his hostel had raised concerns about his behaviour. He was released 2 months ago after spending 33 years in jail for murdering 15-year-olds Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth in Leicestershire in the 1980s. Pitchfork spent a number of years preparing for potential release in an open prison, but has been returned to a closed jail. Experts say he is unlikely to be released again. I'm joined now by criminal defence barrister Jeremy Dean QC. Jeremy, welcome to the programme. Now, we don't know the specific details of why Pitchfork was returned to prison, but was this predictable?
I wouldn't say that necessarily that this was predictable. The parole board granted him parole. He was obviously vetted very carefully. It might have happened, it has happened, but I wouldn't say that it was an odds-on certainty by any means.
Well, I mean, look, first of all, he's a double child murderer. Should he have even been allowed to have some sort of parole? Should he? Why did he get the option for that?
I mean, the answer to the question, should he have been allowed parole, is an incredibly controversial question. There's a strong argument when you kill two other human beings, especially children, that you should never be released. And I can see that argument.
Yes.
In terms of why it happened, it's because he was not sentenced to a whole life tariff.
Right.
He was sentenced to 28 years on appeal. He served that 28 years. He was entitled to be considered for release. He was considered for release. The parole board deemed him fit for release, and therefore the process permitted his release. That's how it was.
But it's interesting that it took those at the hostel to say that his behaviour was a bit odd, which is why, I mean, we don't know the full details for now, so, you know, we're just speculating, but that's one of the things that we do know.
Yeah.
For them to see that, yet the probation service seemed to think that he was safe to be released.
Well, the test for the probation... I mean, what I would say about the parole board, what needs to be clearly understood by the public, is that, you know, you're dealing with a range of expert individuals who, probation officers, ex-police officers, ex-judges, they're very, very well equipped to make the decision. They clearly felt that he wasn't a risk. But, you know, the process has worked because he was released. He's proven himself to be behaving suspiciously, and he's been returned to prison. So the process has unfolded.
But they're lucky it unfolded without him causing harm to anybody. I mean, you know, this could have been a lot worse. And
it could have been.
Thankfully, there's a lot of sort of support around that for other people to acknowledge that he doesn't seem to be doing the right thing.
No, absolutely. Look, I'm not. He wasn't sentenced to a whole life term, and therefore he was eligible for release. There's an overwhelming argument that he should have been sentenced to a whole life term. The big question here is whether a person who kills 2 children should ever be released, in my view. And frankly, although I'm a die-hard defence barrister, and always have been, and always will be, I don't think necessarily that there is an argument in favour of someone like that being released. But if they are going to be released, then, you know, the process has to work, and it's unlikely he'll ever be released again.
What about the death penalty?
I'm 100 trillion billion% against the death penalty. I mean, the death penalty is cruel, it's barbaric, it's been shown to have brought the lives of innocent people to an end. It's irreversible. Can you imagine in 2021, 2022, a person being hauled to the gallows on London Bridge, wherever it may be, and executed?
Well, it wouldn't be the gallows, would it? I mean, it'd be lethal injection or electric chair, something like that instead. But you said imagine that. I'm not going to imagine the gallows.
No,
that is
fair
barbaric.
enough.
That is barbaric.
Fair enough.
But, you know, the fact that the taxpayer is paying for certain, you know, these people who are clearly, and I understand I do get the argument that if then it's not 100%, then there's absolutely no way you should be, you know, putting somebody to death if you're not 100%. But in some of the cases, especially in the paedophile cases, where you actually have people who are paedophiles and committed murder and things like that, and you have actual video evidence and proof, proper proof that really is indisputable, then surely it would be more realistic.
Well, you know, you've picked up on one aspect of what I said, and you've argued the point. Well, if I may say so, what you're saying is that where the evidence is invincible, there's no risk of a miscarriage of justice. But that actually isn't the main point for me. The main consideration for me on the death penalty is that to kill those who kill, or to bring the lives of criminals to an end for the crimes that have been committed, is barbaric, and it's inhumane. And I'm afraid, however much it costs the taxpayer, and I'm a taxpayer, I'd rather go to bed at night knowing that we are not killing fellow citizens, whatever they've done, than than support the death penalty. I would never support the death penalty.
I'd rather go to bed at night knowing they weren't on the planet, just for people who have done such heinous crimes like that. But what do you think, Albie? I'm going to bring you in.
On the death penalty?
Well, just, the probation service death penalty, your thoughts?
So, on the death penalty, I don't think it's for the state to decide who lives and who dies. On the parole board, I mean, look, he served his 28-year sentence. The real question is whether or not people who murdered 2 children should serve a whole-of-life sentence. I personally think that they should do that.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that he wasn't given a whole-of-life sentence, to be honest, because one would ask, what do you need to do to get a whole-of-life sentence?
I was surprised he was even released. What do you think?
I'm conflicted. I listened to the learned gentleman with great interest. And I would like to introduce this as a suggestion. Maybe the family have got a bit of a say. So rather than leaving it to the state for being barbaric, maybe after a certain amount of years, when the family have managed to think and consider everything, not just in the aftermath of the murder, maybe they should be asked, what do you think should happen to this lad? Maybe they should be, maybe they should have the say. Because Jeremy, there must be families up and down the country who really want the perpetrators of their loved ones. They really want them dead.
Yeah,
to be blunt.
If I just make two points arising from what's been said. Firstly, the likelihood is today that Colin Pitchfork would have been given a whole life tariff. The law has moved considerably. So were he to be sentenced tomorrow, there's every possibility he'd have got a whole life tariff. On the question of family involvement, I'm afraid, and I see your point, and on the face of it, it's a good point, but I'm totally against that. You cannot have family members influencing criminal justice. Decisions have to be made objectively by those who are steeped in the experience of criminal justice. I mean, you can't have a family member calling up and saying, I want the bloke dead, or I want the bloke to stay in another 5 years, because emotion and reason are enemies. They're not compatible.
Sure, but there is already a precedent in court where family members can go and actually make a statement.
Oh, absolutely.
That could influence the judge's decision as far as the outcome of a sentence, isn't there? Like restorative justice, that they're already involved with the criminal.
There are victim impact statements these days. They don't really influence the judge's decision. What influences the judge's decision are the factors that are referred to by the family, but they're freestanding considerations. But you just can't have family members playing an active role in the process, because if you do, then emotion will take priority over logic, reason and the law, and it just can't operate like that, I'm afraid. That's my view.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. No, I've understood it.
So you believe the probation service is fit for purpose, and actually this is an example of it working?
I think on the whole they are. It's not foolproof, but on the whole I think the Parole Board does a very good job.
Well, listen, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining me.
That's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for your thoughts. That's Jerry Dine, QC. He's a criminal defence barrister. Now, after the break, my panel will have their say on our great British debate. Is the probation service fit for purpose? We'd like to hear your thoughts too. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. The taxi driver who survived the Liverpool terror attack says it's a miracle that he's alive. In a statement, David Perry described the bombing as an evil act and said he's thankful no one else was injured. He and his wife Rachel also thanked the public for their amazing generosity after the blast on Remembrance Sunday. 124 people have been arrested following protests supporting the 9 jailed Insulate Britain activists in London. Demonstrators occupied Lambeth Bridge and Vauxhall Cross yesterday, forcing police to redirect traffic. The majority of those detained have now been released and are under investigation. Farmers are demonstrating in Dublin over the government's climate change demands. A convoy of tractors arrived in the city centre as part of a protest against methane reduction targets, which have been set at 22 to 30%. The Irish Farmers Association says it could cost the rural economy €1.1 billion a year and lead to 10,000 job losses. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been sacked as Manchester United's manager. That's after the team suffered a 4-1 loss to Watford. It's the 5th league defeat in 7 matches. Coach Michael Carrick will take charge while the club looks for an interim manager for the rest of the season. And a UK first, a zebra crossing has been introduced in Portsmouth that lights up as people approach. Its sensor-triggered LED panels in the road make it more visible to drivers and safer for pedestrians. If the lighting system proves successful, the concept could be replicated across other parts of the city. I'm back at 5 o'clock with a full update for you. Now back to Nana.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
So back to our great British debate this hour. I'm asking, is the probation service fit for purpose? But you can also get in touch with us on all the things that we're discussing as well, whether you think that perhaps the death penalty needs to come back. Now, this all comes after the Ministry of Justice confirmed that double child killer Colin Pitchfork has been arrested and recalled to prison over a breach of licence conditions. Now, he had been released 2 months ago after he spent 33 years in jail for raping and murdering 15-year-olds Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth in Leicestershire in the 1980s. So let's get my panel's take on this. Albie and Danny, with the return of this double child killer, he's gone back to prison, and yet the fact that he was even released, I mean, what do you think of the service that enabled him to be released in the first instance, the probation service? Do you feel that they're fit for purpose if this is the sort of thing that they're considering and thinking it's okay?
Well, I mean, as Jeremy was saying, if he was being sentenced today, he probably would be sentenced with the whole of life sentence and not the 28-year sentence that he was initially sentenced to. So I guess my main gripe would be with that rather than the parole board, because the parole board is made up of expert individuals who were doing their job, and we are not the experts.
Really.
I think we have to trust experts. I certainly trust experts when they're making decisions about things which I don't know anything about. I'm not happy with the outcome of what happened, but I do trust that the parole boards are in good working order.
I think that this would undermine the parole board, something like this. We need to understand what he's being recalled to prison for, because there are terms and conditions to his licence. One of them may be you've got to be in by 10 past 10 at night. Now, he may have come in at 20 past 10, we don't know. Or, I hope not, he may have approached young women, because that was the speculation in some of the media. Now, if that's the case, I hope that lad suffers brutally in prison. No, just let me put my case forward, please. Because of what he did, we've given him a second chance, and if he has approached young girls and women, which is OK, I don't want to undermine anything.
The only thing is we can't speculate, because we don't want that to affect anything. We want to make sure he goes back.
Well, he's back in prison. He's back in prison. So that then brings into question how good the parole system is. I think, Nana, I'm sure there'll be plenty of other people who've broken their conditions and have gone back in prison, not as high profile, though.
Yeah.
So, again, that lends itself to your view that maybe it's not fit for purpose.
But surely if someone's broken their conditions and then they go back to prison, isn't that a sign of a system working? If he didn't go back to prison, I could understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But as you just said, he's gone back to prison, so that would indicate that it works. I think the problem for me was the initial sentence, not necessarily the parole system, which you've just admitted actually works.
It sounds like you're on the side of the offender. What if the offender's gone back to prison and been recalled for attacking someone or raping someone? So that could be, that's obviously another crime. So you're going to go, you are breaking the terms of your parole or your licence. I wouldn't have sympathy. I'd look at it differently. I'd say, OK, I'd see it as a sign of failure rather than a sign of success if someone is caught breaking their parole conditions, their licence. Personally,
I'm not sure how you could deduce that I'm on the side of the offender from what I just said. Maybe I'm on the side of the system, if you wanted to say I was on the side of anything. I'm just saying, with the example that you just gave yourself, he was released on parole, he broke the parole conditions, and then he's ended up back in prison. To me, that shows a system which seems to work.
Well, I've looked and seen the stats, and it's something like 98% of the time or 99% of the time they get it right in terms of releasing people, and they go on, and these people don't do bad things. But that last little 1 or 2% is actually thousands. There's lots of people within that, and that's a lot of room and margin for error. And if you were that 1% where it went wrong, where we got it wrong, then that wouldn't wash.
But what's the alternative, though, Nana?
I think the alternative is to keep them in prison, and as the QC said, what he said, Jeremy said, was that now he would have been considered for release. So I think that, seeing as the law is different now and he wouldn't have been considered for release, then I think that needs to be taken in consideration. He shouldn't be released. Even though he's been sentenced for a certain period of time, if the whole sort of structure around that sentence changes because we've learned something new, which is people like that should never get out, then it should change. I think it should change whilst he's in there.
But how can you argue that it's a great expense keeping them behind bars on one hand, and then on the other hand say they should never be released?
Well, because the death penalty isn't here. If it was the death penalty, then I would actually say that. I'd be saying that somebody like that, actually, I would have that sort of person executed, especially if I knew 100% that they did it. So for me, I have no problem with the death penalty as a way of punishing or as a deterrent, and I do believe that it does actually work. So that's what I'm saying. But the reason why I'm saying just keep him in there is because there's no other alternative, is there?
I think what's interesting, and you just made me think of something by saying 100% done it. I think this particular criminal was one of the first criminals to be convicted using DNA evidence, so we do know that he did definitely do this, so I think that's a very interesting point. On the death penalty, as I said before, I'm not in favour of the death penalty. I do not believe it is for the state to be playing God and be deciding who lives and who dies,
well, so they
regardless
so a murderer
of...
somebody like that, then he played God and it seemed to be all right. That's OK, then.
But the state has to be above that. As a society, I believe... Well, it does.
But why are we above that by saying, OK, it's not an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and that was actually in relation to something else, that particular phrase. But it's what you're doing is what in the animal kingdom would happen if one of the pack killed or did that. The animals would probably remove that one from the pack and kill. If a dog bites somebody and maims them or harms them in some way, we will put down that dog.
But Nana, we're humans, not animals, and we like to think of ourselves as different from animals, don't we? And society, I think, in most Western countries, apart from the US, has moved on from the death penalty, and I don't think crime now is any better or worse as a result of the death penalty being... Is crime better in the US because they have the death penalty? No, I would argue that crime is worse in the US,
also got guns,
despite the fact that they have the death penalty.
Yeah, but that's not... I mean, you could do that, but then you could also say, well, actually, the right to bear arms, the fact that they can now, carry machine guns, and, before it was just a single-barrel shotgun where you couldn't kill as many people. Now you can kill 10, 20, 30 people with one round. Yeah. I think there's lots of different things that change.
And also, Al, I think you're right. My deducement was incorrect, and I apologise, because you're on the side of the system, not the offender. But I think you need to persuade me. You just said that you believe in America the death penalty isn't a disincentive to commit murder. I mean, where are you getting this from? Have you read any studies that suggest that without the death penalty there'd be fewer? Or that with the death penalty there'd be more or fewer? I've got that the wrong way around.
No, we know what you mean.
You know what I mean? So where'd you get that from?
I know what you mean. I was just asking a question. Is crime in America better than in Britain because they have the death penalty? From what I understand, the answer is no. We look at the awful crimes that happen in America, and as Nana has said, it might be to do with the fact that they've got guns and so on and so forth. I'm unaware of any evidence that has shown the death penalty makes crime less appealing.
Sure, and also if you think about it, if you are so enraged you are going to deliberately take someone's life, then you're not thinking of consequences.
No.
I would have thought. So there's an argument for both sides of this. Like, if I was so enraged with you, I would not think, hang on, Dan, don't murder him because you could get the electric chair. I don't think that would be in my mind.
Well, I would think that.
But that's because you are a rational person.
Yes.
And a lot of these killers are psychopaths.
That's right.
Yeah, but a lot of them aren't. So it would deter some people. No. By your very logic, a lot of the killers aren't psychopaths, and for those people, a death penalty or the threat of a death penalty would deter them. So I don't agree that the death penalty does not deter people from committing...
It might deter you, but I don't think you can necessarily... But you're not planning to murder anyone.
No, but the point is, your point was that a lot of them are psychopaths. A lot of them are perfectly sane people as well who've just gone and done something silly. So if they knew that the death penalty was, something that could potentially happen to them, that might be one deterrent for them.
So 30 years to life wouldn't be a deterrent then?
Well, it might be, but I think 30 years and then the potential of a death penalty would be the absolute deterrent for some people.
Well,
yes.
Look, I'm conflicted here. I agree with bits and bobs, but America's prisons are rammed full of people on death row, rammed full of murderers.
Yeah.
And I still don't know whether there'd be fewer people, so I've got to get this the right way around.
Don't worry, we know what you mean.
I still don't
try again.
Anyway, you understand what I mean.
We know
what you mean.
Yes, we know. Let's not go through that pain again, shall we? So, what are your thoughts then, the return of to prison of double child killer Colin Pitchfork? We're asking, is the probation service fit for purpose? Maybe the parole system needs revision. You've heard what my guests and panel think. Now it's time for you to have your say, and lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Peter says, After spending that long in prison for such serious crimes, it was probably the wrong decision for the probation service to release him back into society. Well, I'm tempted to go along with that. I mean, it seems a bit crazy. He's been there for, what was it, 28 or even up to 30 years, I think. Andrew says he was let out under terms. He broke the terms and was arrested. So, yes, it's working in this case. Yeah, but you see, the thing is, it might be working in this case, but what if we don't know what he's done to go back in? But what if what he did was another heinous crime? We can't really risk that, can we? Piper says if an expert or judge deems someone suitable for release and then they re-offend, the expert or judge obviously aren't up to the job and should be removed from office. I agree with you. Yeah, for sure. Phil says the justice system in the UK isn't fit for purpose. We should have capital punishment for people like him. Hear, hear. Robert says until life actually means life, the entire justice system will remain a joke. What even are licence conditions? There should never have been any to begin with. Keep the evil locked up. We're also on Twitter today. It's a little bit of a swear word beginning with B. Throughout the day, throughout the show, asking the very same question. And currently 93% of you say no. The probation system in the UK isn't fit for purpose. It's unbelievable. We know. But they don't. It's just so crazy, isn't it? As we watch, we know that it's just not fit for purpose. But it is still early days, and some people may believe that it is. So please head over to Twitter and cast your vote. After the break, we're going global. Foreign affairs expert James Marlowe takes us to the US and Poland for our world view. But first, feast your eyes, it's the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry and cold for many. Let's take a look at the details. Skies will clear in the southwest and temperatures will fall. It will be cold tonight, and in the countryside temperatures could dip below freezing. Some showers will continue in the southeast and it will be windy around the coast. There will be clear spells between the showers. Wales will have a dry and clear evening with the frost forming tonight. Temperatures could fall as low as -2 degrees Celsius in parts of the countryside. Clear skies also extend into the Midlands with a chilly evening to come and temperatures expected to fall quickly. A strong wind will continue to blow along the northeast coast, which brings showers to northeast England. These will be blustery at times with some possible hail. Southern Scotland should stay mostly dry with clear skies, and it will turn rather chilly tonight with temperatures as low as -5 degrees Celsius in some spots. A dry and clear night in Northern Ireland too. It will be breezy around the coast, but turning cold inland.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
I'm Neil Oliver. You can join me live every Saturday evening for opinions and discussions about the week's top stories. There's also a smattering of history and archaeology and features that define our great British Isles. You'll hear my thoughts unfiltered, as well as those of my guests, and we don't always agree. And we want to hear from you too. Neil Oliver Live, Saturdays from 7 on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, Talking Pints, over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good afternoon, welcome if you've just tuned in. Where have you been? It's that time where we cast our eyes abroad and take a look at what's been happening across the world. So who better to guide us on this journey than our foreign affairs expert, James Marlowe, who's in the studio with me now. And for our first story, we're joined from the States by the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Duddridge. Right, so let's kick things off. Paul, welcome. Good to see you. Let's talk Kyle Rittenhouse and talk to us about what's happening there, what's going on.
Well, there was the verdict this week. You must have got some of the news over that side. Kyle Rittenhouse was charged with multiple offences, murder, basically. He was facing murder charges in Kenosha, Wisconsin, arising from the riots in August 2020. And he has been acquitted on all charges. And this has caused a great deal of upset amongst the far left and anybody that didn't actually watch the trial or has never read the American Constitution. So Kyle Rittenhouse pled self-defense as his defense strategy, and it was successful, and this has caused a great deal of upset and gnashing of teeth and wailing amongst celebrities and the ill-informed.
So you say the ill-informed, so in your view, was it self-defense? I mean, didn't he form part of some sort of group that went in to help to protect the neighbourhood, and the police were aware of the group? And I mean, this is the sort of detail that I'm getting from it. Yes, absolutely. You know, his intention, as stated when he went to the riots, was to help. He was, they tried spiking him, saying that he lied about his medical qualifications because he went to help as a medic on the scene because people were genuinely injured. I mean, you have to remember these riots ended up, I think, with $2 billion worth of damage, not just in Wisconsin, but I think 25, the numbers are vague, I believe, but between 25 and 28 people died in the US riots that followed the George Floyd. As a concerned citizen, I believe, Kyle Rittenhouse went and lent help. Again, you have to remember that the police in Kenosha, Wisconsin, had been ordered to stand down. Right. So again, one of the accusations that's being levelled at Kyle Rittenhouse is he's some sort of vigilante. And it's like, well, I don't think you're a vigilante if the police aren't present anymore. If they stand down, what other line of defence do people have? So I see, again, I think he's an American citizen. Some of the charges levelled against him, or some of the opinion levelled against him, is that he crossed state lines with an illegal weapon to go and look for trouble in these. Looking for trouble. Nobody's complaining from that side anyway. Nobody's complaining about the presence of the rioters and the looters and the burners of buildings on the street at that time. But apparently Kyle Rittenhouse had the temerity to go 20 miles away from his own home to a city where his father lived and try and help out. And he actively did that. And the court established, this is not pure conjecture now, the court has agreed that Kyle Rittenhouse was chased and attacked and had to defend himself against, basically against attack. And the law says that if he felt he was in imminent danger of death
or great bodily harm. This is where a lot of people are getting this self-defense wrong, that they think, well, he wasn't going to be killed immediately. It's like, no, he was in fear of great bodily harm. He had every reason to fear great bodily harm, and he had a weapon, and so he used a weapon. And it's an entirely open and shut case. Shouldn't have even gone to trial.
Wow. All right, Paul, thank you so much. That's Paul Duttridge. He's there live in America, in LA, and he has this Politics People podcast. Let's go over to James now. He's in the studio with me now. James.
So let me...
We talked about Rittenhouse, and can we move it on to Joe Biden now? Because Joe Biden has been told off because he called him a white supremacist. So can you fill us in on the details? What's the details?
Absolutely. So I was just going to fill in a couple of the missing parts just over there, but to spin straight to Joe Biden, the Republicans are demanding a apology from the President Joe Biden. Why? Because for some reason, and you have to remember that this trial went on for 3 weeks, and the judge thanked the jury for coming in on time and for listening to everything which took place and accepted that verdict, which he was not guilty. I wasn't listening to everything. Apparently, Joe Biden was, because he said he disagreed with the verdict, which is unheard of. I know you don't particularly like Joe Biden. I'm staying on the fence. But for an American president to allow a jury case to take place and then say afterwards you disagree with the verdict of the 12-man jury or the 12-people jury is unheard of. Can you imagine if it was Donald Trump who was accusing somebody of let's say it was a white supremacist, because that's also what Joe Biden had said, that this man had associations with a white supremacy, but there was no evidence for that whatsoever. Can you imagine Donald Trump saying he wasn't a white supremacist? That would be international news, and yet we haven't really heard about it over here, which is disappointing. So he does need to apologise. Will he? I doubt it very much.
No, right, let's move on to Poland.
Some migrants on the Belarus-Polish border have realised they've been used and abused by the Belarus president, Alexander Lukashenko. Not a very nice man. The EU have put sanctions against that. As a result, he hit back. He flew in thousands from Africa, from the Middle East, to put them in Minsk cars, taken off to the border. Thousands were trying to break down the barriers. Briefly, the Polish are saying this is the last border, because there are no borders pretty much inside of Europe. This is the last border before you get inside of Europe. Poland is saying to the rest of the EU, help us out over here. They're throwing firebombs at us. They're bombing us over here. They're tearing down this wall, this fence. And yet we are protecting you, the EU, because once they get through there, they're into Germany, then they could actually cross over into Belgium, France, and if they wish, to come across to the UK. And of course, the UK does have problem at the moment. We've been talking about it for some time. So that is the issue. Some of them are going back. It is freezing, freezing cold right now, but still, the EU has seen that this man, Lukashenko, is not very well liked, and that he used these people on the border, and of course they've realised that they've just been dumped.
Never find story. Hamas and Pitchfork
Hezbollah,
denounced them.
Hezbollah yesterday condemned the decision by the British government for outlawing Palestinian Hamas. Palestinian Hamas, for those who don't know, is exactly like any other radical Islamic group. Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab, Al-Nusra Front, Ansar al-Islam, ISIS. There are so many of them. There are so many of them that are around. Just let me remind you who Palestinian Hamas is. They are a group who took over violently of the Gaza Strip. They won the election in 2005. 2006, they took it over violently. They took leaders of their opposition, Fatah. They tied their hands behind their backs. They took them up to high buildings, pushed them off the buildings. So it wasn't pretty nice what Palestinian Hamas did. They sent hundreds and hundreds of young girls, young boys, suicide bombers into Israel. Just today, an attack in Jerusalem, in the old city of Jerusalem, where a man associated with Hamas shot, opened fire, killed one, injured another 3 as well. So it is the right decision for the British government to outlaw Hamas in this country, and anyone who associates themselves with Hamas and pays funds for Hamas.
Wow, so that's what's been going on in the world. Thank you very much, James. A pleasure, as ever. That's James Marlowe. He's an expert, foreign affairs expert. Right, you're watching me, Nana Akua, on GB News. More to come in the next hour. So if you've just tuned in, it's just gone 5 o'clock, and for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. The show is all about opinion. Mine, theirs, and of course yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is Conservative commentator Albi Amankona and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Still to come, each Sunday I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP or someone who has had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. We'll talk the highs, the lows and the lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. And today it's Ian Twyn, a former Conservative MP whose seat was swept up by Labour in the 1997 landslide. Plus, as MPs threaten to rebel and dub the new social care cost plan and inheritance tax on the north, I'll ask, is the government fit to perform a U-turn before it's too late? Do you think they'll do it? And of course, we want to hear from you. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or why not send me a tweet at gbnews. But first, let's get your latest headlines.
Good evening. Your latest headlines. The taxi driver who survived the Liverpool terror attack says it's a miracle that he's still alive. David Perry described the bombing outside Liverpool Women's Hospital as an evil act and said he's thankful no one else was injured. He and his wife Rachel also thanked the public for their amazing generosity following the blast on Remembrance Sunday. 124 people have been arrested following protests supporting the 9 jailed Insulate Britain activists in London. Demonstrators occupied Lambeth Bridge and Vauxhall Cross yesterday, forcing police to redirect traffic. The majority of those detained have now been released and are under investigation. Farmers are demonstrating in Dublin over the government's climate change demands. A convoy of tractors arrived in the city centre as part of a protest against methane reduction targets, which have been set at 22 to 30%. The Irish Farmers Association says it could cost the rural economy €1.1 billion a year and lead to 10,000 job losses. The Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai has told the International Olympic Committee president she is safe and well and wants her privacy respected. The comments during a video call come after a series of videos were posted by Chinese state media on Twitter. The Wimbledon doubles champion disappeared after she made sexual assault allegations against a former Chinese government official 3 weeks ago. Conservative MP Tim Loughton told GB News that Beijing needs to be brought to account.
They just do not tolerate any criticism. And that's why many of us have called for, and again, Parliament voted for, a diplomatic boycott of the forthcoming Beijing Olympics, which incredibly the International Olympic Committee awarded to Beijing, despite all the publicity about the human rights abuses, despite what's going on with genocide and everything else. It's just inconceivable that we should be sending VIPs to this propaganda exercise in Beijing next February.
A private funeral has been held for South Africa's last apartheid president, F.W. de Klerk. A small group of guests were seen arriving at his home before driving to a memorial park where he was cremated. De Klerk shared the Nobel Peace Prize with Nelson Mandela in 1993 and was praised for his role in scrapping apartheid. He died early this month after a long battle with cancer. More migrants, including young children, have been crossing the English Channel again in the last 24 hours. Official figures haven't yet been confirmed, but it's believed hundreds have made the journey. More than 24,700 people have arrived in the UK so far this year, almost 3 times more than in 2020. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been sacked as Manchester United manager. That's after the team suffered a 4-1 loss to Watford, its 5th league defeat in 7 matches. Coach Michael Carrick will take charge while the club looks for an interim manager for the rest of the season. There's been a mixed reaction, though, from fans.
It's a very sad day. I think the manager of the club, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, has been hung out to dry.
Yeah, I do feel like it's the right decision, but I just hope we don't go down a spiral now of finding really bad managers and going for the exact same thing over and over again.
It's not been great, has it? And we're just like pretty much a mid-league team. So yeah, I don't think he's done very well, to be honest. I think the Glazers need to go as well.
From tomorrow, the over 40s in England will be able to book their COVID booster jab. NHS England says around 500,000 people in the age bracket are now eligible for their third dose. The government is encouraging people to take the jab to prevent another wave of coronavirus cases. And for the UK, a first. A zebra crossing has been introduced in Portsmouth that lights up as people cross. Take a look. Its sensor-triggered LED panels in the road make it more visible to drivers and safer for pedestrians. If the lighting system proves successful, the concept could be replicated across other parts of the city. You're up to date. I'm back in half an hour. See you then.
Good afternoon. Now, every Sunday, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former politician, sports personality who's had a fascinating career to take a look at life after the job. We talk the highs, the lows and the lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. And this week, my focus is on the bear pit of the Westminster and European Parliaments. My guest has been a high-profile politician in both arenas as a Conservative MP and later MEP. He was the first Tory to win the seat of Edmonton in nearly half a century. And when he won in 1983, Ian Twin had a majority of just 500 in a marginal seat that was swept up by Labour in Blair's landslide election victory of 1997. A confirmed Eurosceptic, he briefly became an MEP before leaving politics for advertising. He's now a consultant and advisor on regulation and public affairs. Well, there's no point asking him now. It says it all there. No, I'm joined by the man himself, Ian Twin. Ian,
hello.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
Me. Right, so talk to me a bit about you, because you won a parliamentary seat with just 500 votes difference. Yes. Talk to me about what you know, how you got into politics, why you got in, and about just yourself, really.
Yeah. I mean, I've always loved the political process. Thought I was probably a Tory, when you were a teenager. Became a proper Tory at university, went off, did academic work, became a lecturer, polytechnic lecturer. Unusual for a Tory, but a polytechnic lecturer. And then I always wanted to stand for Parliament, and the chance came up to stand up for a safe Labour seat, Edmonton. And people said to me, well, don't worry, you can get a nice, safe Tory seat like Southgate later, when just fight this one, do it well, and then next time round, we'll find you something decent. And I won.
You won.
And we had it for 14 years.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Oh, it was great. It was wonderful. It was lovely. I mean, it's a lovely place. I mean,
it is nice, isn't it?
Yeah, people are great, and a real big range of different communities there. So that was enjoyable, and being able to help people, literally, but also having the chance in Parliament to change a little bit of legislation and get involved, support Margaret Thatcher at the time.
Margaret Thatcher, what was she like? Did you actually get close to her and talk to her?
Yes.
Because some of them don't let you anywhere near them. Some people say they've never spoken to our leaders and things.
No.
They're in the same chamber.
No, she, very kindly, quite motherly at times,
was
actually.
She?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
She doesn't come across that way.
But she liked arguments. And if you didn't have anything to say and you couldn't defend what you had rather sillily said off the top of your head, then you would, eaten, dead meat. But if you could keep your end up, she liked it. She loved it.
You see, that's the thing. I see Margaret Thatcher, when I was at the time, and I thought she was fabulous, I think she was the reason why I, myself thought, that I would be a Conservative and a Tory. I can remember telling my dad, Daddy, because I'd gone to this nice posh boarding school, I did go to a comprehensive for a while, and then my dad got a nice job and, decided to send me off to this boarding school. And I remember at the end of it, I said, Daddy, I think I'm going to vote Conservative. And he went, get out of my house. No child of mine votes for a racist party. That's what he said.
Oh,
that's what he thought at the time. That's what he said.
Yeah.
But that's not, I don't believe that's, that was his perception of what the Tory party were. But he also had respect for Margaret Thatcher.
Yes. She was, she knew where she wanted to go, and she took advice, which is good, and she steered. It's been things like the right to buy council housing, helped an awful lot. It liberated people, certainly in Edmonton, to for the first time ever, to get their own home. And the selling of nationalised industry shares enabled people suddenly to work out, hang on a minute, I work for this company, now I've got shares in it too, and we want a say in this. And in a way, it it bypassed the trade unions a bit until they suddenly realised that they needed to be part of the same scheme and support it. So she was wonderful, changed the country.
Well, she did, yes. And you realise that a woman can lead the country.
Yeah.
And she's been an example, of course. Then we had Theresa May that sort of...
Yeah.
What was Theresa May like? I mean, what
She was lovely. And again, would listen and argue quite happily. But it was a very short time. And we had the 2017 election where someone put into a manifesto what sounded like a tax on pensioners. And that did not go down well. That almost killed it that night when it came out on the news.
Yeah.
And I was on the doorsteps, actually in Twickenham that night, and you could feel someone had pulled the bath plug.
Right.
It was quite serious.
But I mean, you lost your seat, was it in 1997?
I did.
Same time as Portillo?
Yes.
And of course, Tony Blair was
Yes,
new.
he came in.
Yeah.
When I drove home, because we live in Dulwich in South London, although we had a place up there, we drove home that night back to Dulwich to rescue the boys who were at school and they were staying with friends. And we drove along the embankment on the Westminster side, but all the noise was coming over from the party in the festival hall from Blair, celebrating. And it was a bit difficult to take. You've just been chucked out and you've got all this partying going on from the Labour Party, from New Labour.
Yes, New Labour,
yeah.
yes. And that all went wrong as well, though. But it always does, though. If a Prime Minister is in for a long time, then eventually it will all go.
It does.
It does. I mean, Boris has been in now for a bit. Do you think he's... I mean, I quite like him. I mean, it's his personality. He does things. They go, he never answers the questions, but then people laugh at that.
Yeah.
They find it entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like him too. Yeah. I think that, from my point of view, I'd rather we got back to making Brexit work properly.
Yes.
Maybe trying to do less but doing it better. I think the levelling up is good. Making sure that the whole of the country is treated equally, that we get some of the northern cities and some of the other cities, even in the south, to compete better for jobs and for being prosperous. That's great. And just do that. And then we'll judge him on that, not on everything else. But then COVID's come along, and it's very difficult and been expensive.
It's been expensive, especially to some of the people who know the people, where they've handed out contracts to people who didn't appear to have much experience. But then, I don't know, part of that is if you don't know what to do, and you might try and draw on the people around you that might be able to help. I don't know whether that's as sinister as people are making out. I'm not sure.
I think in peacetime, I would be very cynical about it. I think given that this just hit us, and for some reason, the NHS procurement hadn't stocked up on these things and kept up-to-date stocks on it, we suddenly needed the masks and the protection wear and had to develop vaccines. I think that the government probably just said, we'll get it at any price and we'll buy from different people and we'll make sure we've got enough. And he did that, and that works. So I do forgive the buying from different people for that. I think we needed it. If they'd not done that, we'd be sitting here now and saying, what were they doing?
Yeah, but I mean, it'll be investigated further anyway. Now, you were an MEP as well, which I always find a bit of an odd job, because it just seems to me they get a six-figure sum.
I didn't know it was a job.
It isn't, is it? Exactly. It's six-figure sum. They go off and have jollies in Europe and Brussels. What was that about? What do they do?
Well, say yes and no to legislation which the European Commission propose, then it comes to the Parliament, and the Parliament discuss it, make changes, and then it goes back and it goes to the nation states as well as to the European Commission again to see whether they like the changes. But from I was only there a year because it was the end of a mandate. My colleague who had to retire because he had Parkinson's disease. So I was very fortunate to have this end of the mandate year. But I had more power and influence over one or two pieces of legislation in a year there than I ever did at Westminster.
Really?
Because unless you're a minister, and a very senior minister, you don't have a lot of power at Westminster. You can argue, you can make small changes, which we will do. But I got there one night. One of my colleagues who was taking the legislation through said, I need your help. You've been lobbying on this from the advertising industry, from a consumer affairs point of view, for the last year, and we've seen what you've been saying about it. So you come and help me take this piece of legislation through. And I did, and we made changes, and we got another piece through as well.
It's quite a bit
Which
of power
was great.
you had
It was
right there,
real.
isn't it? Real power.
Real politics, with a small p.
Yeah.
Actually, how you get something done. So that was great.
Yeah. So now, what are you doing now then? It's all finished. You're not doing politics anymore
No.
that way.
In 97, I started looking for a job. After a year, I hadn't got one, which was a little bit worrying at times. And then I managed to, I was successful, got a job in the body which represents advertisers. I was a public affairs director, and I did that till 2017. I took a year off for the MEP bit, and now I'm retired from that.
That's nice.
So I'm digging up dahlias at the moment.
Are you?
Because it's getting a bit cold in London, and they need to go in the greenhouse.
I'm surprised you're not going to write a book. Are you going to write a book?
I've read a lot of books by people who were MPs, and unless they've got a lot to say, they're not the best readout.
Is it not?
No. They become, when you see them remaindered in Charing Cross Road in London, in second-hand bookshops, you know, maybe they probably should have done more gardening.
Yeah, well, digging up dahlias sounds like about the right thing to do, Ian. Thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Wow. Fabulous to hear Ian Twin talking to us about his experience. Right, coming up, it's our big debate this hour. And today I'm asking, should the government U-turn on changes to the social care cap? It's facing a rebellion from northern MPs who say that it's an inheritance tax on their poorer voters. Stay tuned. First, take a look. It's the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry and cold for many. Let's take a look at the details. Skies will clear in the southwest and temperatures will fall. It will be cold tonight, and in the countryside temperatures could dip below freezing. Some showers will continue in the southeast, and it will be windy around the coast. There will be clear spells between the showers. Wales will have a dry and clear evening with the frost forming tonight. Temperatures could fall as low as -2 degrees Celsius in parts of the countryside. Clear skies also extend into the Midlands with a chilly evening to come and temperatures expected to fall quickly. A strong wind will continue to blow along the northeast coast, which brings showers to northeast England. These will be blustery at times with some possible hail. Southern Scotland should stay mostly dry with clear skies, and it will turn rather chilly tonight with temperatures as low as -5 degrees Celsius in some spots. A dry and clear night in Northern Ireland too. It will be breezy around the coast, but turning cold inland.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel. They're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News Home and Security Editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
So, good afternoon. It's time for our Great British Debate this hour. Should the government U-turn on its controversial social care payment plan? Now, let me explain. OK, so in September, Boris Johnson said no one in England would pay more than £86,000 in care fees during their lifetime. You'd pay what was judged fair from your own resources, but no more than £86,000. Now, once you reach the cap, costs for personal care will be paid by local authorities. But 2 days ago, ministers announced that support payments from local councils will not count towards that personal limit. So it will be as if you never got the support, leaving more of your own resources vulnerable. So Andrew Dilnott, who devised the original 2011 idea of a cap on costs to prevent people losing homes to soaring care costs, he said that he was very disappointed and that it would leave about 60% of older people needing care, less well off than expected. Meanwhile, Tories in red wall seats have called it an inheritance tax on the north and threatened to rebel when the plans are brought before Parliament this week. I'm joined by Helen Barnard, Deputy Director of the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, an independent organisation working on solutions to poverty in the UK. So, welcome to the programme. First of all, this move means that more pensioners' incomes will be vulnerable to this cap. Can you briefly just give us an example? So if I have a house, I'm up north, my house is worth only, say, £150,000, I then need care, my cap is £86,000. Does this mean that's the limit, or are other things not included and therefore I'll end up paying more? Is that the point of this?
Well, I mean, the context to this is how much homes are worth up in the north as compared to in the southeast. So down in the southeast of England, average house prices are about £350,000. In London, it's £500,000. If you come up to the northeast, your average houses are only worth £144,000. And of course, lots of people have homes worth £70,000 or £90,000. Now, what the government has done with this change, which is driven by savings, the Treasury wants to make it cost less. What they've done is to say, OK, if you have a house that's worth £90,000, the amount you will have to pay towards your costs has just doubled. If you have a house worth 350 grand down in the southeast, this makes no difference to you at all. So it's focusing in on people in the north who have managed to buy a house, but it's not worth all that much compared to down south. They are the people who are giving the Treasury all of these savings. And it actually means if you've got assets worth under £100,000, the new system barely helps you at all, actually. This big promise that this was going to be much better than the current broken system, you're only going to be about £6,000 better off as a result of all this change and the tax rise. So it's really, it seems like the Prime Minister said nobody will have to sell their house. It turns out what he meant was nobody in the southeast of England will have to sell their house. If you're in the north, you are still highly likely to lose most of what you've managed to accumulate over your life.
Isn't this part of the problem when they talk about the levelling up agenda, that they are detached from the reality of what it's actually like to live in the northeast, because it seems almost as though none of them have appeared to have gone there. I don't understand why they wouldn't have realised that £80,000 is already too much in any case. Would you say this is a regressive step for the government to actually go for this plan, because in the other plan, those people probably would have kept their homes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen this twice this week, haven't we? We've seen big levelling up promises, but you see they've kind of sneaked out this change to social care on Wednesday, which just hammers people in the north. And then all the rail plans came out, and it turned out we aren't getting a new high-speed link between Leeds and Manchester. Bradford isn't going to get help. It does seem like, the big levelling up promises just keep having the legs kicked out from under them because the Treasury isn't willing to put the money into the north that they are willing to put into London and the southeast of England.
Thank you so much for joining me, Helen Barnard. She's the Deputy Director for the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, let's see what the panel think of that. Today we're asking if the government should back down on its controversial social care cap, which critics say would be an inheritance tax on the north. You've heard what the guests think. Let's have a chat with my panel. Wow. I mean, look, what do you think?
Social care and healthcare funding is going to become more of a problem for this country in the future as our population ages. And I have come to the uncomfortable conclusion that we probably will have to accept some higher taxation in the future to fund that. I think the difficulty with social care is every time a government comes out with a plan to fund social care, there are lots of people who are against things, and sometimes we do need to start talking about what we're for. We were against Theresa May's plan, we're against Boris Johnson's plan, assuming we're against it. We were against the national insurance rise, which was brought forward earlier on this year. But we need to fund social care somehow. So the question is how? And is it funded by the taxpayer in higher taxes, or is it funded by people's assets, i.e. their houses? And what proportion of those assets should go towards healthcare funding?
Yeah, but we hear that. But what do you think then, Danny? Because should people have to sell anything to pay for this thing?
Well, first of all, I come from the city of Liverpool in the northwest. I live in the Midlands. And I would suggest to our massive audience in the north, from GBNews audience, just to forget about being levelled up. Honestly, the country is run like a business, and there are certain parts of the country that are not desirable or attractive to throw billions of pounds at. We need to accept that. In the Midlands, there's a place called Vauxhall, which is run by an incredibly popular Conservative, and I think they've got a majority of 5 or 6. So that's a red wall that's turned blue a long time ago. And the Metro Mayor of the West Midlands keeps banging on. It's just platitude after platitude that we're going to level up. Walsall is unattractive. If I was running GB... No, it's true. Walsall, as far as throwing billions of pounds at, we just need to get real. So this levelling up, Boris Johnson, by the way, if he goes up to the North East or Yorkshire, he's going to get lynched because people, Labour voters, were told... Boris Johnson pleaded with Labour voters... generationally that voted Labour, because that's what the North is like. I'm from the North. And they said, lend me your vote. That was to get Brexit done, yeah? Lend me your vote. And he actually said, more or less verbatim, as your hand is hovering over the ballot, lend me your vote. Let's get Brexit done. And now I believe that people in the North will feel abandoned by Boris Johnson.
But he's prepared to, I mean, this sounds like he's prepared to U-turn, and at least he's prepared to have a think about what he's, and go back, and if it's a wrong policy, maybe come up with some sort of U-turn, which I don't think is a bad thing.
I don't necessarily think U-turns are a bad thing either if we come to the right outcome in the end. The question is, what is the right outcome? And every Conservative Prime Minister since 2010 has tried to come up with an outcome that no one has liked.
Well, I know what I don't want. I don't want to sell my home to pay for my social care, especially if I'm paying high taxes throughout my life. I want to make sure that my care is paid for. I don't want to sell anything. I don't want an 80 grand cap shouldn't even be there.
So then do you want to pay more tax?
No, but the point is, if you look at this, I pay enough tax as it is, but if you kind of look at it, it's certain conditions that they have excluded from the care. So it's things like dementia, where you're going to have to pay for it if you get that, but if you get something else, you'll be all right. And that can't be the way. It has to be. It's all or nothing. If you're going to... I think there should be some sort of insurance that people should potentially put forward. There can be. I don't mind a 2-3-tier system where some people get the standard social care, others who put in a bit more will get a bit more. Other countries in Europe do it. Why can't we do that? Why does anyone have to sell a house?
The average property price in the town of Bury, or was it Burnley, They're next to each other.
They'd both be given
£99,000.
Yeah, but nobody should have to sell a house
Average.
anyway.
Why don't they do? I was thinking a fair thing would, if the property prices in London, the average price is £500,000, then let's do a percentage. Let's just do a slice of pizza, salami slice, at say 15%. So you're 15.
You'd come back to food.
You're 15.
Yeah, we've done so well, haven't we?
Pizza and salami.
He's hungry.
So your 15% is fair. So off a £100,000 house, that's 15,000. Off a £500,000 house, that's 75,000.
Yeah, but why should it? I still come back to the point. Nobody should have to sell their home.
You're going to have to pay more tax then.
But that's fine. But you know,
is it fine?
No. I think people should have some sort of you should have some sort of insurance pot or something where you put in money specifically for potential dementia care, because not everyone gets dementia. So those people who got something else will be funded for. Why is that? Why is that? If you had cancer or something like that, and you were in your sort of latter years, and let's not go. But if you were, your care would be funded. However, if I got dementia, I wouldn't be. And yet we've paid the same amount of time. Why is that? That's not right.
Do you genuinely believe that people at an early age would pay for dementia insurance?
Yes, I do.
Do you?
Yes, I do. I would pay for that insurance.
Wow.
I would.
That's something that I wouldn't.
And I think insurance companies should really need to step up now, because we've got a limit. We know it's £80,000 or £86,000. If that's the case, then there must be some sort of insurance that you can put, start paying for dementia care, because that's the only way, I think. And the government should have some sort of subsidisation of that insurance.
Potentially, I would definitely be interested in us having a much more national conversation about how we fund health and social care in this country, whether or not incorporating the private sector into it a little bit more in terms of adding more competition, adding some more insurance systems like we see across Europe and also in Israel, which have some of the best healthcare systems in the world. This sort of centrally funded national health service that we have in the UK has not been replicated anywhere else in the world. Maybe there's a reason for that.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. It's ridiculous. Right, and lots of you have been getting in touch as well with your views. Adam says, don't know why people can't take out some kind of affordable life insurance. That's what I said, Adam, exactly. That would be able to offer individuals for care in their life if needed, such as if they get cancer, dementia, Parkinson's and more. The government should match the insurance cover if a payout is required. We're on the same wavelength, you and me. Nick says, since the day Boris Johnson became the Prime Minister, he has been threatened with a rebellion on the so-called Red Wall, is always quoted as the rebels' main weapon. This so-called weapon is as useful as a broken water pistol. Greg says, so if I'm fit and working class, the government wants me to risk my health by manually working until 67 to pay to protect civil servants from COVID who receive an extra pension for all their hard work behind a desk. I hear you. You see, it doesn't make any sense. Nobody should have to pay for that kind of care. But listen, still to come after the break, I'm joined by the respected cartoonist and illustrator, Dr. Tim Benson, for this week's Bookmark. First, let's get to your latest news headlines.
Good evening. The taxi driver who survived the Liverpool terror attack says it's a miracle that he's alive. In a statement, David Perry described the bombing as an evil act and said he's thankful no one else was injured. He and his wife Rachel also thanked the public for their amazing generosity after the blast on Remembrance Sunday. Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai has told the International Olympic Committee president she is safe and well and wants her privacy respected. The comments during a video come after a series of videos were posted by Chinese state media on Twitter. The Wimbledon doubles champion disappeared after she made sexual assault allegations against a former Chinese government official 3 weeks ago. Farmers are demonstrating in Dublin over the government's climate change demands. A convoy of tractors arrived in the city centre as part of a protest against methane reduction targets, which have been set at 22 to 30%. The Irish Farmers Association says it could cost the rural economy €1.1 billion a year and lead to 10,000 job losses. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been sacked as Manchester United manager. That's after the team suffered a 4-1 loss to Watford, its fifth league defeat in 7 matches. Coach Michael Carrick will take charge while the club looks for an interim manager for the rest of the season. And for a UK first, a zebra crossing has been introduced in Portsmouth that lights up as people approach. Its sensor-triggered LED panels in the road make it more visible to drivers and therefore safer for pedestrians to use. If the system proves successful, the concept could be rolled out across other parts of the city. I'm back in half an hour.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Right, now it's time for our bookmark. It's the part of the show when we invite an author onto the programme to enlighten us on their latest publication. And this week, we're doing something a little bit different. Dr. Tim Benson is Britain's leading political cartoonist. And every year, he compiles the best political cartoons the world has had to offer, and he publishes them in his annual it's a lecture on cartoons. Benson also has more books published on the subject than anyone else. He's even acted as an external examiner for postgraduate degrees in cartoons. And I'm thrilled to say that Dr. Tim Benson joins me now. Hello, Dr. Tim Benson. Welcome to the program.
Hello, good afternoon to you.
Hey, you're very close to the camera, I will say.
Okay, I'll move back. How about
that's better, that's better. Oh, not that far back. Come forward a bit. No, your head's gone down.
Not that far back, I'll come forward. Right. But by the way, I'm not actually a cartoonist. I'm a cartoon historian.
Oh, really? A cartoon historian? Crikey.
Yes,
so,
a cartoon historian.
So you've got a doctorate in cartoonology then? What is that?
I do indeed. Yeah, not much use really, unless you do what I do.
Well, you haven't done badly on it though. What does that entail?
Not too badly.
Is it the history of cartoons in newspapers and things, or what is cartoonology?
Absolutely, it's both contemporary cartoons, the cartoons you see in newspapers every day, and newspapers from the past, actually from the past 150 years.
I mean, cartoons in newspapers and cartoons in magazines have had a lot of attention put on them. I mean, there was the Charlie Hebdo situation in France as well. With your political cartoons, have you found yourself in any situations that, any worrying situations from anything that you have put together or a cartoon that you've created?
Well, I don't actually create the I edit Britain's best political cartoons, which comes out every year and which can be found on Waterstone's humour table. And now and again, there are cartoons which are contentious, usually because there's a misunderstanding. Because the thing is, with a visual image, people can misinterpret it very easily compared to reading text, which is usually quite specific. And so on certain issues, cartoons have proved contentious.
Yeah. And as an editor then of these cartoons, what does that job entail?
Well, I'm a bit sad, really, 'cause I go through the papers every day and I look at every national newspaper and I take note of all the cartoons that are published. I then edit the best ones into an anthology, which appears about this time of year. But it's because it appears every year, it's never ending. When I finish one book, the next day I start the next.
The kid that had a collection of cartoons, do you have a collection of old cartoons and things like that?
Well, yes, I have a cartoon gallery. In fact, the only one I would say in Britain, the only one in the world that specialises in original cartoon art.
Oh, wow.
Which is down on the River Thames in Putney.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Well, listen, Dr. Tim Benson, thank you so much for joining me and explaining...
My pleasure.
And lovely to speak to you. Wow, that's our political cartoonist. He's got a cartoonist and he's the owner of the Political Cartoon Cafe as well, Dr. Tim Benson. Now it's time for our Supplement Sunday section. Let's see what my panel have brought to the table. I'm going to start with Danny's story on TV licences. Danny.
Yes, well, having, like I've been released from a 20 stretch behind bars, having just been booted out by the BBC for being too old and too white, their words, it's true.
No.
I promise you, there was a conversation around the lineup being too old, too white, the audience were too old, too white, and 3 weeks later I got the boot. I was the only freelance radio presenter there. All the others were staff, so they've been placed on, like, overnights or whatever, just to try and get him to leave. And right. I've been replaced by somebody a lot more diverse.
Well, fair enough.
Yes, anyway.
Digress. Talk to me about your...
So the licence fee, I have an insight. Well, the crazy thing about it is that if it wasn't for GB News, my broadcasting career would have terminated completely. Oh. And it would have done, because, you know, I'm a 50-year-old white guy.
Yes,
anyway,
yes.
Moving on to the licence fee. I don't think that the licence fee should be scrapped, but I do think there should be a discount for older people, because old people, they just are not cared about when it comes to programming. As it was described to me by my boss at the time, the audience are too old, too white. They refused to put calls on air of old-sounding people because it didn't want to put young people...
Coming back down to you, listen, the headline was that the BBC's in
what
crisis.
Was the headline? I don't even know what the headline was.
There's a huge campaign for referendum on TV licence fee to launch.
Oh, right, yeah, got
It's a major campaign. Listen, he's talking about himself. I don't know what Sorry. He's forgotten what we're doing. A major campaign for a national referendum on whether to axe the BBC is set to launch early in 2022.
Yes,
so that is the story.
And by the way, this was my story as well. I sent
the story.
I sent it to the office this morning.
I could literally hear the sort of violin as you were talking. Poor old Danny boy.
Maybe there should be a referendum. Maybe there should be.
Yeah. You think there should be?
Maybe there should be.
What do you think, Albie?
I think referendums, generally speaking, are quite divisive and tend to divide society, and society is very divided as it is. I think there's definitely a case to be made for reform of the licence fee, whether or not that's scrapping it, whether or not that's making it cheaper for older people or younger people, I might argue, just for myself. Yeah. But I think there's a case to have a discussion about the BBC. I don't think the BBC should go. It's a great British institution and long may it continue. But I do think we need to do some reforms of the BBC, look at impartiality, get some more right-wing voices on there and make it fit for purpose.
Yes, because I'm also, for those who are within it, obviously to stick within the guidelines, if there are guidelines, for those guidelines to be applied equally across the talent, across the BBC, if that's the way it is.
I think
that's really important.
Albie's hit the nail on the head. The newsroom at WM, it was openly hostile towards
talking about
Conservatives.
You again?
No, we're just talking about impartiality. It was Albie who brought it up. And without a doubt, it's OK to be a rabid left-winger in the newsroom. And people should, if the BBC, I believe that the BBC should do for the journalists the same as the doctors with the Hippocratic Oath, to be impartial,
right.
to be fair.
But what about the licence fee, though? If we come back to that,
a discount for old people, because the BBC just don't give a damn about them.
No, you don't know that, though.
No, I do.
That's not fair. No, but I think that's
even Tim Davey.
But I think that is a bit of a wide brush to say that, because the BBC consists of lots of different elements. So that is a wide brush. If we come back, though, to the licence fee, you think that it's actually older people should get a discount, but we should still be paying it.
Listen, the Director General...
What if you don't watch the BBC, though? What if you don't watch the BBC? Because even if you don't watch the BBC, you still have to pay the licence fee.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't watch the BBC. They watch things online, they watch things... So what about that?
It just sounds counterintuitive and crazy. If you don't watch the BBC, you still have to pay £157.50.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It does sound counterintuitive.
If you don't watch the BBC, should you have to pay the licence fee?
So I can see why, if you were someone who didn't watch the BBC or believed that the BBC was too woke or wanted the BBC to be dismantled, you would believe that you should not be paying the licence fee. But those who are on the other side of the argument would argue that the BBC provides a service for millions of people across this country. It's still the most popular broadcaster in this country. It develops some great talent. Some of the best journalism that comes out of this country comes out of the BBC. If I think back to when I was a teenager, things like BBC Bite Size helped me pass my GCSEs. So in that sense, it's more than just a normal broadcaster. It provides a public service. So people who are in favour of the licence fee would make that argument, but I understand both sides of it.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, look, I think you've also got to be careful of the alternative, because if you do then get rid of someone like the BBC, then all those, I think, in a sense, they kind of regulate the cost that other broadcasters can charge for their content. So people like Netflix and all those realise they are slightly in competition with people like the BBC, and they have to keep their prices at a moderate and affordable level. Otherwise, I think if you didn't have the BBC as a sort of moderator, in a sense, those prices would go up.
I don't think that's correct.
You don't think so?
No, because in America, Netflix doesn't have a national mandatory subscription for a TV, but the prices are the same.
Well, you're entitled to disagree. That's fair enough. Right, Albie, your story. What have you brought to the table? Talk to me.
Yeah, I've been particularly chilled this week by what's been going on in Austria. And there was a great story in the Sunday Times today from Peter Conradi, where he was talking about the new lockdown which has happened in Austria and about all the riots that have gone on. And actually, at one of the riots, there was a sign which read, in 1938, they blamed the Jews for everything. In 2021, they blame the unvaccinated for everything. People, wake up. Which is quite a chilling comparison. It might be a little bit over the top, but it's a comparison that has been made nonetheless. And I think we need to be really careful here in Europe with civil liberties, because I do think potentially we've begun to take things for granted.
What do you mean by that? So what are we taking for granted?
The freedom to choose whether or not to be vaccinated.
Right.
The freedom to choose whether or not we want to leave our houses, and the freedom for politicians to make those and mandate those decisions for us.
So you're saying that we're taking those freedoms for granted?
I think we've become complacent. Freddie Sayers from Unheard was interviewing Austrians in Vienna when they announced the lockdown for the unvaccinated earlier on this week, and no one seemed to care. I found that shocking. We should not be locking down people who based on medical reasons. I mean, what comes next? Should we have locked down people in the 80s who had HIV?
Well, no,
absolutely
but
not.
HIV is not airborne. I don't think so. I think sometimes people conflate this and they use this as an argument when we're not locking down people to hurt people or torture people. The premise of the lockdown is actually to delay the spread of the virus so that other things can be put into place. So, for example, health services can catch up. That was the point. If you didn't lock things down, then you'd have an overwhelmed health service. And then from your argument of this all freedom, civil liberties, you'd find that if you did get COVID in a bad way, there wouldn't be anybody there to care for you, Danny.
Well, and also, you said you were chilled by this sign saying in 1938 they blamed the Jews, in 2021 they... You're writing.
You it's terrible. I'm not a doctor, no.
No, it's not, but I always cheated at school, so it comes naturally to me.
And you're cheating now.
I'm sick and tired of conflating 1930s Germany with 2021 in Austria. I think people need to go back and look at what actually happened to the Jews in and it's nothing like this. I'm married to a Jew, and I know that Jews are sick and tired of history being misrepresented because it just waters down the horrors of 1930s Germany. It really does. They're sick and tired of it. You just go up to a Jew and say, do you think it's like 1938 Germany? They'd say, what the hell are you going on about?
He makes a good point.
That's why I said the sign was over the top. Look, I think we're slightly misunderstanding what I'm saying here. I'm not anti-lockdown.
Right.
I'm anti-vaccines being mandated for an entire population. I think governments need to make their case much more persuasively for people to be vaccinated. In Austria, just 65% of the population is vaccinated. That is a failure of the government.
Well,
the government needs to do better to persuade and educate people into being vaccinated,
why are the
as
government
opposed
being
to just
blamed,
mandating
though,
it.
for something that people should be able to see as a common sense? And it's an idea to kind of preserve and save their own lives, and also to try and kick this virus to the curb, so that eventually a level of natural immunity will emerge, which will mean that we will not be susceptible to this thing. I think when you said that people are spoiled, I kind of was thinking that what has happened is people are spoiled in the West. This is a first world problem. You go somewhere like Africa or somewhere where they're grateful to have that vaccine. This is not a question. They'll be fighting, they'll be treading over you to get that vaccine. I think people they've forgotten things like mumps and polio are now coming back because it's, oh, my civil liberties, I don't want to get vaccinated. Fine. If you want to handle these viruses, they're these deadly diseases, and you want to return, then carry on with that. I get why they're having to mandate it, because they have tried the approach of, we'll inform you, we'll educate you, see if you'll do it, but it's not worked. What do you do if that doesn't work?
So what I would argue is that they've not been doing it effectively enough. If we just compare Austria to Britain, to Italy, where the rates of the virus are much lower and the vaccine programme has gone much better, you have comparisons within Europe of governments that have got it right with persuading and educating their people into getting the vaccine.
Right.
I agree with you completely that I do think there is an element of complacency in the West with vaccines in general. And when I hear people say things like, oh, I don't want to get the vaccine because we don't really know what's going on, I sort of think, well, if you were in Ghana, for example, you would get the vaccine straight away. But we've got countries in Europe which have got 75% vaccinated, and countries in Africa with 5% vaccinated. Like, that is shocking. But I think what needs to happen in Austria is that the government needs to do much better at educating and persuading people into being vaccinated, rather than mandating it for a whole population, which I feel very uncomfortable with.
Well, I mean, that'd be great if they'd listen, but I mean, I agree with you in a sense. I don't want to have to mandate this thing, but if people don't listen, then what do you do? Now, for another story. Danny, this is you. It's a bit more light-hearted, though. The headline, I'll do it for you from the start: man banned from all-you-can-eat barbecue for eating too much. Was that you?
Yes, of course it was. Right, OK. The man, known only as Mr. Kang, told TV that he was banned from this seafood barbecue buffet because he ate 1.5 kilograms of pork trotters during his first visit and 4 kilograms of prawns on another visit. This gets even better, though. The restaurant owner said every time he comes here, I lose a few hundred yuan, which is about 23 quid. Even when he drinks soy milk, he can drink 20 or 30 bottles. When he eats the pork trotters, he consumes the whole tray of them. And as for the prawns, usually people use tongs to pick them up. He actually removes the tray from the hot plate. So I listen, that guy, I think, should be banned because he's been inconsiderate to other diners. That's why he should be banned. He shouldn't be banned because he's got a massive appetite. And the crazy thing is, I've Google imaged the lad, and there's hardly an ounce of fat on him.
Oh, my God. You need to find out what he's doing.
By the way, Albi, I always try and come up with a food story on a Sunday just before we go, because the banter between Nana and I. I'm not offended.
No, that's good.
Of course I'm not.
Well, no,
I enjoy it.
No, it's fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, listen, Albie, what do you make of that story?
I think it's quite a funny story, but look, you know, you've got to be considerate of other people when you're at a buffet. You can't just be taking all of the food and not expect something to happen in the end. I just always... Where do people get this kind of cheek from to do things like this? It really just astonishes me every time.
This is all-you-can-eat buffet. I don't like them. I don't like anything where other people can put their hands in and pick things out and everybody eating at the same time, that sort of thing. I find that a bit gross. It's almost like, you know, you eat a cake and then they say, the children made it. You think, did they wash their hands, the little snotty noses? And
or even birthday cakes when they blow out with the candles or spit all over it. They just gob all over the cake. Slice of cake? No, thank you.
No, to be fair, that wouldn't stop me. I'll still eat it. Right, so on today's show, we've been asking, is the probation service fit for purpose? And according to our Twitter poll, 93% of you say no. I'm not surprised at all. It really isn't it? And there are people who are saying that it is. Something needs to happen with it. Well, I've got to say thank you so much to my panel for joining me today. Thank you very much, Danny.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Albie, thank you very much.
Thank
It's been
you.
a pleasure. Did you enjoy it first time?
Loved it.
Oh, that's fabulous. Thank you very much. You will come back?
Oh, if you invite me, I'll be here.
Oh, very well. Right, and I've got to say a big thank you to you at home for joining us. I'll be back next Saturday at 4, or in fact, no, it's Friday, isn't it? At 4. But now, let's get your latest weather forecast.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry and cold for many. Let's take a look at the details. Skies will clear in the southwest and temperatures will fall. It will be cold tonight, and in the countryside temperatures could dip below freezing. Some showers will continue in the southeast and it will be windy around the coast. There will be clear spells between the showers. Wales will have a dry and clear evening with the frost forming tonight. Temperatures could fall as low as -2 degrees Celsius in parts of the countryside. Clear skies also extend into the Midlands with a chilly evening to come and temperatures expected to fall quickly. A strong wind will continue to blow along the